And hey, Ticket Squad, thank you for watching my best 20 movies I've seen in 2023. It's now my number one video of all time. I had a great year in quality viewing in 2023, so I was able to keep the bad films away at bay for the most part, but not entirely. Otherwise, we wouldn't have a video. I got 10 films that did make my list, including a few dishonorable mentions that end up scoring C's on a scale of A through F. Let's get to it, shall we? Starting with number 10. An older woman who wants to live her life movie, but it's no Gloria, the 2013 version. Natasha McElhone plays Carmen in this 2021 film set in Malta. Her character plays a woman who looks after a priest, but gets shunted after he dies. But she gets confused for the new priest and starts giving advice that helps out those in the town. I wanted to like this one, but the moments of quirk involving a pigeon just don't work, and most of the conflicts get brushed off, leaving the viewer with unanswered questions at the end. The film wants to be both a woman finds her heart and gets a love drama while also poking fun at religious bureaucracy, but it's only somewhat successful at both. Over at number 9, we got a biopic that tries to hit hard, but goes nowhere. And that, of course, is Big George Foreman from 2023. It's a biopic of the boxer who grows from a tough youth in Houston to become heavyweight champion of the world. But after losing to Muhammad Ali, his life hits the skids until he has a near-death experience, which leads him becoming bored again and operating a youth center in Houston until financial issues compel him to return to the ring. Considering that A, George's life fits the 3-act story perfectly, and B, this is a rare faith film that doesn't seem gratuitous, there could be a good film made of his life, but Big George Foreman isn't it. Thanks to a pedestrian script and a plethora of cliches, the film is flat on its feet, as the faith portions of the film get hammered hard by director George Tillman Jr., who once did Men of Honor, a significantly better film than this. The boxing scenes are nothing special, and there are some bad impressions of Howard Cosell and Johnny Carson in this film. The characters are too thin for the most part, and even the fact that George Foreman is the executive producer of the film means that some of the tawdry parts of his life, such as 2 ex-wives who don't show up at all, and some recent allegations of abuse at the youth center get brushed aside. Despite a solid soundtrack and some good performances from Forrest Whitaker as the trainer, Davis as Foreman, as he particularly grows into his role in the second half, and Sullivan Jones, who can talk a good game as a low whip, but not necessarily box it. The film is like Foreman the first time he fought the Job Corps. Flat on his feet, slow, and able to be knocked down if he can survive the heavy blows. Meanwhile, over at number 8, we got one actor's swan song at this spot, and it's unfortunately not quite a 10 on the dance floor. 2014's 6 Dance Lessons in 6 Weeks is based on 2001 play, but it feels like it got piped in from some time in the 1980s. A Southern conservative retiree, played by Jenna Owens, in her final performance, is given the titular lessons by a sarcastic gay dance instructor played by Cheyenne Jackson. And along the way, the relationship between the two builds from spiteful enemies to good friends. I tried watching this a few years ago and gave up largely because of its broadest barred comedy in the first half, as well as it embracing the cheap stereotypes. It doesn't help that Jackson is kind of a clod when it comes to comedy. He proves to be more deft on his feet, and in the more serious dramatic moments in the second half. Thankfully, the film does improve as it goes, as the second half highlights the connections that each character needs from each other, as the two leads manages to appeal on a basic level. At times, it's a bit too sentimental, but at the same time, it does show how much each of them need each other, and at least Rowan provides most of the good moments in her final film. I can't determine who the bigger waist is here, though. Oscar nominee Jackie Weaver is a sex pot client of the dance instructor, Or Oscar winner Rita Moreno is a neighbor who constantly complains either the music is too loud or the dancing feels like stomping on the floor. Over on number 7, it suffered a lot due to some heavy-handed editing from a concerned husband. And that, of course, would be Indiscretion of American Wife from 1953. It stars Jennifer Jones as an American who is married but falls in love with a Roman man named Giovanni, played by Montgomery Clift. While she's waiting on a train to take her home, he tries to convince her to throw everything away and stay with him. Jones's husband, David Selznick, took Terminal Station, which was directed by Vittorio De Sisi, who is probably most famously known for Bicycle Thieves, a really good film, and cut about a half hour from it. What's left is not nearly enough time to believe the romance between the two characters, let alone establish their relationship. And at times they were less interesting than some of the incidental characters, such as the priests and the fans of the station. And I don't care if Giovanni is supposed to be an Italian academic. Slapping a woman for giving an answer he read or not here is a pretty big red flag, if you ask me. Although there's a couple of good scenes in the film, and the leads do manage a solid chemistry, my interest in the film and the romance soured after he struck her. Good riddance, and arrivederci. Meanwhile, next up is our number 6, where the second time proved to be not the charm. And that, of course, would be 1984's Grace Quigley. It received some controversy back in the day for its darkly comedic plot about euthanasia and the elderly quality of life. Directed by Anthony Harvey, who led Katharine Hepburn to an Oscar win in The Lion in Winter, and co-starring Nick Nolte as a hitman. In the right hands, maybe Danny DeVito? This could have been a cult classic at worst, or a gangbusters comedy like Ruthless People or Heathers at best. Grace is an elderly woman on the verge of being evicted for having a bird, and has no prospects of where to live. When she witnesses hitman Seymour, played by Nick Nolte, taking out her landlord, she gets an idea. Maybe he can put her out from misery of daily living. He's opposed even though she offers him his life savings. But she finds a new lease of life and a new idea by allowing others to use his services to let them leave with dignity. The relationship goes from boss-employee to almost like a second mother to him. Nothing quite screams dignity like a 3-time Oscar winner begging for her shoe after coming up with just enough to pay for a cab. Thanks to a pedestrian script and skittish direction from Harvey, Hepburn and Nolte are stranded in a film that totally goes all over the map from sentimental to sickly funny. Although a few scenes work, such as an extended sequence in a nursing home, and a car chase involving a hearse with an unusual driver, too much of Grace Quigley ends up to be a misfire. Which takes us to number 5. We have a biopic that has its ambitions, but is largely unable to translate what it was that this guy was special. And that, of course, is Canton from 2014. It's supposedly about Mexico's most famous comedian, who would end up most notably in the Best Picture winning Around the World in 80 Days. But the film itself seems torn between trying to show who he was, and is, and the tumultuous making of the film through the eyes of director Mike Todd, played by Michael Imperioli. At times, Todd and his trials in getting big celebs to do cameos in Days for free seems to take over the spotlight from Canton's rise, from cleaning up the tent shows to starring in them to becoming a Mexican film star. Although a few scenes, quick such as fireworks taking place while him and his wife dine al fresco, Canton's effort in forming a separate union for actors that wouldn't be as corrupt as the other unions around him at the time, and his ability to turn a forced apology into a cover letter to get a job, not nearly enough of them work. It doesn't help that there's a scene in Brownface that lasts for 2 to 3 minutes, without a point, that both Imperioli and Oscar Jayenda, as Canton are limited actors, or having unknown Spanish actors playing familiar names such as David Niven and Liz Taylor. But the film itself can't even get its crowning moment of glory right towards the end by botching Yul Brynner's name. Why, film? Why? Over in number 4, we get a good argument why you should avoid original films not featuring Oscar caliber talent. And that would be The Last Summer from 2019, which stars KJ Apa of Riverdale fame as Griffin, a high-achieving student wanting to go to Columbia in the fall. During his summer, he helps Phoebe, played by Maya Mitchell, with a documentary that might help her get into NYU Film School. They get closer to a secret threatens to upend everything. In Thread 2, Aaron and Alec decide to break up and see other people over the summer. While he appears to have fallen for a flighty classmate, she is slowly wooed over by rookie ballplayer Ricky Santos, played by Tyler Posey. Thread 3 has a teen who has been waitlisted to her final college choice, who takes a babysitting job watching over a talented teen actress who just wants to enjoy the little things in life. By a mother best known for a cameo role in 16 Candles. Thread number 4 has Alex's co-worker trying to hook up with as many women as he can over the summer. And finally, Thread 5 has 2 nerds who dress up and get mistaken for brokers as they start to bond and maybe find a couple of women interested in them. Oh, and then there's a teen who wants to join a skateboarding tour. That's a lot of threads for a teen film. Too many, in fact, considering most of them don't hang out in the same circles. The teens turned out to be likable. Yes, even the coworker who has a sweet, empathetic reason for doing what he's doing. But bland. The most interesting story involves the 2 teens who reinvent themselves one tin bucket of beer at a time. Guess they never heard of college, where you can do that sort of thing for a lot cheaper. It's kind of telling that it's the first film from director William Bindley since Madison way back in 2001. And what in the hell is Gabriel Anwar doing in this? For number 3, we dive from one original to another original mess. It's another warning against diving into Netflix originals eyes closed. And that, of course, would be The Worthy. This 2016 film from the United Arab Emirates takes place in a near-future dystopian society. Is Aisa, played by Mahmoud Al-Atrash, and his family seem to have found a relative oasis of safety in a former airplane hangar with sources of food and water. But that safety is threatened by Musa, played by Samir Ismail, who shows his gratitude after the family rescues him by turning into Jigsaw. Not literally, of course, but he starts saying down the rules of who is worthy of surviving through a series of traps. It wants to be a cross between Saw and 10 Cloverfield Lane as strangers disrupt the circle of trust in the group dynamic. But it goes nowhere close to that potential. Dialogue drones on about Islamic values one minute and chaos the next, but it never leads to anything coherent. Throw in some slack direction and a bad ending, and the result is bored tedium for the most part until it wraps up 95 minutes later. Although the 2 leads have their moments, and there's a couple of nasty traps in the second half, The Worthy feels quite unworthy of our time. And with number 2, you can give us good casts, but this proves that you can't make it work in a bad film. "2003's A Talking Picture is my first Manuel de Oliveira film, and it could be my last one as well, unless somebody can give me some good choices in the comments section. Anyway, a Portuguese history professor is taking your daughter to various sites in the Mediterranean she has up to now, only talked about in lectures. Both are heading to her husband who's working in Bombay. Her kid manages to ask a lot of questions that she answers with the patience of Job. Meanwhile, a cruise ship captain, played by John Malkovich, tries unsuccessfully to woo 3 different women on a dinner table. French businesswoman Delfina, played by Catherine Deneuve, Italian model Francesca, played by Stefania Sandrelli, and Greek actress teacher Elena, played by Irene Papas. Although they don't speak the same language, they understand each other perfectly. Eventually, those stories will meet, heading into an exciting finish that feels cut and pasted from another film. Where do I begin to list the problems with this one? For starters, they call in the fact that they can understand each other despite speaking different languages twice. Thanks for breaking the fourth wall, film. And then there's what the film is trying to be about. The message appears to be not to deal with Islamic culture, lest it leads to the destruction of Western civilization. Elena lectures the table and the audience on how Arabic culture slid into a lack of modernness and a rise of fundamentalism. So this film is Islamophobic now? And then throw in how the young girl gets an Arab doll from the captain in a clumsy metaphor, and yep, it is confirmed. Not even Papa singing, and she does have a lovely voice, can save this one. Now it's time for the dishonorable mentions. Because Watch Mojo, your joke might have worked once, but it's old now, 10,000 lists later. The Black Suite from 1956 at least has an interesting name for its protagonist, Dr. Gordon Ramsay. Where's the lamb sauce? Although there's promise in the premise, and Basil Rathbone gives us all, most of the names have little to do. Despite a chaotic climax, the film is too pokey for a short runtime, and more talky and less scary than a horror film should be. Yay! Another Netflix original. A Deadly Invitation might as well be called Murder She Podcasted. At least there's a bright, breezy, light pace to the film, and the scenery is nice to look at. But the mystery lacks depth and requires everyone to spill their guts. Still, I'd be on board with round 2 with Agatha, who seems like an interesting person. The biggest crime against Murder Mystery 2 is that it tries too hard to be the next Thin Man. A breezy tone, a couple of decent set pieces, and once in a while, the pattern between Adam Sandler and Jennifer Aniston hits, but the mystery elements are lacking and the co-stars don't have enough to do. Particularly wasted is Melanie Laurent, who is actually capable of being funny. Noah has a good lead performance from Russell Crowe, a solid supporting cast, and some good set pieces. But the slapdash script that tries to connect the religious and secular, and a pokey pace, rains on Darren Aronofsky's parade. Subway is Luc Besson's debut that showcased his style. Isabelle Adjani and Jean Reno have their moments, but lead Christopher Blank is a blank slate with hair that has more personality than he does, and his bland acting does not help to bring his character to life. And last but not least, some of the music between scenes leaves a lot to be desired. I swear to God, I spotted one of the interstitials to Seinfeld in this one. In the middle of a thriller scene. Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 is my number 11 for the year, a film that substitutes a lot of the horror of Part 1 with touch-and-go humor and a lack of subtlety of what the chainsaws represent. At least Dennis Hopper fully commits to the craziness, and a chainsaw fight towards the end is like a kinetic ballet. From Jordan, the unknown saint has a thief hiding his loot in a grave before being captured, and before he can say Blue Streak, when he comes back, it's become a shrine, and a small town is formed around it. There's a few quirky laughs, but it's kind of difficult to sort out what is going on with the film, particularly at night, and a slower pace doesn't help matters any. And my number 12 for the year is Women Talking. Despite an all-star cast and a grabber of a premise, the film too often comes across as a stage play you have to watch to get extra credit for a class. The script feels like it's trying too hard to spell things out in the over-the-top fashion, lacking subtlety that is screaming for awards. Although Polly has the ability to use humor to ease the tension, and she knows when to put an end to things, this film is my biggest disappointment of 2023. Which leads us to number 1, a film that's bad enough that Rotten Tomato fans reacted after hearing the star wanted to stack the ratings in favor for his film. And that's 2014's Kirk Cameron's Saving Christmas, which gives us 7 minutes of opening credits that come in 4 different styles, and an extended dance breakdown to Angels We Have Heard on High, with chipmunk voices no less, that looked like it took months of practice, and 10 minutes of closing credits, replete with bloopers. But it's apparently how Kirk is able to defeat several straw man arguments by arguing that common Christmas things are in the Bible. Never mind that real Christian journalists have argued that Kirk's PowerPoints aren't real either. The fact is, it did feel a bit more congenial than God's Not Dead, and I laughed more than I did with All I Want for Christmas or Christmas of the Cranks, which featured future Oscar winner Jamie Lee Curtis and Tim Allen, so it's probably in no danger of making my Cinema Hall of Shame. But I do think Kirk needs to do over to a 12-step program on hot chocolate. What you're talking about, dude, is an addiction either to the chocolate or the sugar high. Alright, that is my list of the 10 worst films I've seen in 2023. What was your worst film that you saw in 2023? Leave a comment in the section below. Be sure to pound that sub button, squad members, and spread the word. I'll be back with some regular reviews and another look at the Oscars before you know it.